All right, lots of good stuff to share on the show today, and we're going to jump right into it. And before we do, for any agent maybe watching or listening to the show and they want to raise their level of accountability, it's funny, we were just talking about that off the show, and they want to talk to us about getting into a coaching relationship, we'll put a link underneath this video, both in the description and the link below. Feel free to click it. You can schedule some time to learn more about our Listing Agent Academy and determine if now is the right time to grow your business. So, gentlemen, good morning. I'm excited. There's a lot of good stuff on today's show. How was the weekend?
Good.
Fantastic.
Nice and hot up.
Yeah, we went to the west side of the state. It was phenomenal. Colton, have you ever been over to Grand Haven?
We've been to the sand dunes before. I think that's out that way. I don't know Grand Haven specifically, but the Silver Lake sand dunes we've been a couple times.
Dude,
yeah.
Go to Grand Haven. You and Addie gotta go. It's unbelievable. You feel like you're in Florida or like you're in California, but you're actually in Michigan. Like it's like a beach community. It is a wow. It is like, I kept telling Amy, I'm like, I can't believe we're in Michigan right now. I couldn't believe it.
And in all fairness,
great.
I only heard from you once or twice over the weekend, so you must have been having a grand old time.
It's pretty good for me on a weekend.
Just when he was sitting in the hot tub, gave you a buzz, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. What are you drinking? What was that, Colton?
It's a little Advocare, a little Spark. This is my coffee. I don't do coffee. Okay. This is my version of coffee.
Yeah. Love it. Well, let's jump into our first topic for today. And that is this whole marketing message that I believe is contributing to the failure rate of real estate agents in the industry. And it's marketing messages like this that I think they know exactly what they're doing, because it's exactly what agents are hoping to hear, which is easy. Mm-hmm. It's all marketing messages around it's easy. There is a better way. You don't have to cold call. Do this other thing. And what the marketers are doing, and they're genius at it because they understand psychology, is they're creating this common enemy, which in this case is, we'll call it cold calling, just for the sake of conversation. They're taking something that they themselves, their worldview, they being the marketer, says, I don't like to do this activity. Personally, I don't like to make outbound prospecting sales calls. I don't like receiving them. And so I'm going to make that the common enemy. And I'm going to make a marketing campaign around that everybody will resonate with. Because here's the truth. No one likes to make cold calls and no one likes to receive them, right? So we can buy into this hypothetical truth and say, listen, stop doing all of that. Come over here, do this easier thing. And it's exactly what the realtor is hoping to hear. It's exactly what they're hoping to find. And when they come across an ad like that or a marketing message like that, they jump all over it, not knowing that on the other side of the offer, they find themselves in the exact same pain point than they were when they were just having to make the calls themselves. Now, here's the other truth before we get into this. The other truth is, it isn't a debate around does cold calling work or does cold calling not work? Because if we were to put up on stage all of the people in the United States in real estate who earn more than 7 figures in taxable income, you would find as many of those people have a direct outbound prospecting business model as you would any other model. You'd find as many or more. That'd be my argument, because we run in those masterminds. I'm friends with most of them, and they're all outbound based. And so it isn't a fact of does it work, does it not work? We know for 100% certainty that it does work. It's just the fact of, oh, you don't like it, so therefore you're going to position it to not work because you know the vulnerable realtor who doesn't also like to make calls or not good at it, who's addicted to information, who's searching hell and high waters for the path of least resistance, or they say to themselves, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a different way to do this. They come across a marketing message. It's like, hey, cold calling is dead. You don't have to do that. Come do this other little magic show and you can get clients on demand. And it's exactly what they're hoping to hear. Ben, what are your thoughts?
Well, it might be an ad on one of your videos because I've seen them while they're learning how to cold call, right? It's just unfortunate because a lot of people say things don't work without context for themselves, right? Or context of how it is being positioned by somebody that is saying it's working, right? I find that we talked a lot about foundation pieces. So jumping in, diving into something and just giving it a try for 2 days, just like we were talking about last week, not giving it the amount of time. So instead of listening to the wrong person saying it doesn't work, why don't you try and find somebody that it is working and listen to them? Or the people that are telling you it isn't working, ask them at what level have they tried it, and just to have context.
Yeah, it's a great point because it's not that this works or that doesn't work or this is better or that's better. We talked about this too. Everything works if you work, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so the other question needs to be asked, well, let me ask you, Mr. Marketer, what are you selling? That's the other thing. If cold calling doesn't work, what are you going to say next? Oh, here comes the pitch. And then they sell the shiny object, right? And then the vulnerable realtor who is hoping and praying for a message just like that lets themselves off the hook. See, I knew there'd be a better way. I knew there'd be an easier path. Buys the offer. And it could be any marketing gimmick. It could be, internet leads. It could be this widget thing that goes out into markets and says, these are the most likely sell. What it's going to come down to, at some point, you're going to have to do something to get a result. And that part you're not going to like. And this has nothing to do. We'll kind of bring it down just so everyone can stay with us. This conversation doesn't have anything to do with cold calling. That's what's so interesting about it. This has to do, in this context, cold calling is the chicken and broccoli and the working out. And the marketer is, hey, just take this little fat loss pill for 3 easy payments of $19.99, and you working out, that's old school. Oh, tracking your calories, that's the thing of the past. Tracking macros and lifting weights and eating healthy, you don't got to do any of that. Just take this little red pill. And it's just 3 easy payments of $19.99, and you will lose weight. And that is what works so well with humans. Yeah, Colton, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the context thing is so important. Brandon, what you just said a couple minutes ago is it works if you work, but then there's a caveat to that. Does it make sense for you in the time and place of your business right now? Like marketing works, content, it works, but does it work for you right now? Because the missing piece of context for marketing, for direct mail, for networking, a lot of this stuff is it works. But it takes a long period over a lot of money a lot of the times over a long period of time for it to work, And so when we break the business down to its first principles, essentially, number one, people have to know you're in real estate. Number two, you have to talk to enough people about the fact that you're in real estate and if they need any real estate needs, you got to meet with people about real estate things. Like that's it. People got to know you're in business. You got to talk to people who might be doing business and then have a persuasive enough value proposition that they work with you. And, that's all masked by shiny, easy stuff where, if you just knew that you had to do those things. Here, let me give you an example. I talked to an agent. This was probably 6 months ago. I just thought of this, but he had a mentor. A lot of companies give you a mentor, EXP, KW. He had a mentor. And his mentor, this lady, was a certified BA. Like she was incredible, right? She was making $1 million a year. She made $1 million a year the last 6 years in business. And this was his mentor. And he was working with her for about 8 months. Okay. And in those 8 months, he made a whopping $0. Because the missing piece of context wasn't that the mentor couldn't teach him what to do. It wasn't that he didn't learn anything from the mentor. It was that the mentor that he had two factors at play. She had a way of doing business he couldn't replicate. You know, he didn't have a big database. His husband, which the kid didn't have a husband, but you know, her husband had this thing with work, and she just got so many referrals from his work. And the other thing at play was her style of communication. She was the type of person, and I know we all know this type of person. She could say anything in any type of way to anybody and get away with it. You know, and she could just be all up in your face and tell you exactly how it was. And so the point is, a lot of the times, those easier systems, if you will, like we're talking about, although they can work, it might not be replicatable for you with where you're at in your career.
Well said. I mean, even the story was great, Colton. And even before that, the way you articulated just this business into its first principles is so true, because the nuance is the thing that gets lost because there's so much emotion. You know, you don't know, to your point, all of the nuance that Susie has that you don't have. And the variable is Susie, and you're not Susie. You don't know when you hear about somebody really succeeding through doing a marketing campaign in a neighborhood where they're the neighborhood expert, and you say to yourself, wow, that seems like a great way to do business. What's missing is the fact that that person has been marketing in that community for 14 years. They've invested multiple six figures into that farm. They own Facebook groups. They do mass events in that group for over a decade. But the vulnerable real estate agent who's in pain right now, in search of hopefully the easy button, hears that person on a podcast talking about it, starts and launches their farming program, and doesn't get a listing in a month and says, dude, that farming doesn't work. No, it's not that farming doesn't work. It's that you don't work. You're not good enough yet. You didn't do it long enough yet. You don't have the credibility yet. You don't have the brand recognition yet. And so everything works, again, if you work, you know, and to say something doesn't work when there's proof that it does, I think is an emotional statement. I don't know what, Ben, your thoughts are on that.
I look at a lot of people selling something. They're selling you the idea, whatever idea you were using, farming or marketing to a specific geo region. And people are selling the idea, and they stay at 40,000 feet. I think if you are going to take on one of these strategies, whether it's shiny or not, I think you really need to make sure you align with somebody that gives you the context we're talking about, understanding the tangible and intangible skills or traits that you need, and then actually have a roadmap of steps to follow, like the actual integration of the process, and not just, you know, burn your old strategy and jump on the new one because of hearing, you know, the big picture 40,000 foot idea and seeing the result, but really understanding the nitty gritty implementation of it all before you align with somebody or fire up a strategy.
Well, all right. So I'm going to get into something controversial. I guess I'll hold my tongue. Colin, go ahead. You say what you're about to say, because I'm going to get into
something. I just wanted to button this topic off with one last thing, and it's to say that if you have fallen for, you know, these marketing messages or the easy path, like, number one, you're not alone. I was there myself, you know, like my first coaching program, you know, after a year and a half, 2 years of being in the business, struggling. I remember vividly one day sitting in the car. My girlfriend and my wife now, Addison, and I were living at her mom's, and I had been in real estate. I knew what to do. I knew I had to be prospecting. but for some reason I just wasn't doing it. And I remember one day leaving to go get Del Taco, and I looked in my account to just make sure I had like a couple $100 left in my account. And I just sat there just like for 10 minutes, just sulking in how upset at myself I was, because I knew what I had to do and I just wasn't doing it. And so fast forward a couple months later, we go to this seminar, right? And Addison was there with me. My wife was there with me, and they got us, man. They got us. They had the thing. They knew exactly. And again, my whole perspective isn't to say that coaching program, that I had to borrow $8,000 from my wife, my girlfriend at the time, to get into. I'm not saying it was a bad program, right? It just didn't make sense for me at that point in time in my life and in my business. And so if you did or have in the past ever made a decision like that, I don't know if you guys have heard of the term sunk cost bias.
Absolutely.
Right? Don't fall into sunk cost bias. And if you have made a decision and invested into something that either maybe could have been a scam, because those are always out there, but oftentimes it's not a scam. Most people out there, most marketers, the majority of the products out there are actually some decent products. It's just a lot of the times we don't take the responsibility to understand that if it is or isn't for us. But don't allow the bad decision to prevent you from making a new, better decision. Because if you do that, you've permanently locked yourself into a bad decision. And so a lot of people say, oh, coaching doesn't work, or, oh, I've done that before. And just be careful of that thought process, because you're locking yourself into a bad decision from the past without being able to kind of, grow past it and make the next new right decision for your career.
Love it. Colton obviously ate his Wheaties this morning, just dropping some bombs. I love it.
Yeah.
I want to, well, before we move on to the next the next topic, I want to give a great example. And some people are going to just absolutely have a tough time with this and be very, very mad. And that's okay. I can't make everybody happy, but I'm just going to tell the truth. Okay.
Please.
Here's the thing when it comes to these types of messages is these companies or marketers are actually the ones, well, they have to also bend on their own beliefs and their own standards, because they know that selling something that is like discipline, focus, hard work, those messages don't work. I'm going to prove it in a second. And so even the marketers are forced to change their messaging and go out there and promote stuff that maybe they don't even believe in because it works better. Let me give you probably the best example of this in real estate. You guys ready for this? Oh, people are going to get so mad at me, but it's okay. I'm going to give you the best example of all time. One is, love him or hate him, Mike Ferry. Okay. His message has been the same, which people get mad about. Hey, that's all old school. And you could see on his YouTube channel, he has 56,000 subscribers. And then you look at his son, Tom Ferry, who seems to be the flavor of the week. Whatever the new hot thing is out, that is what he promotes, and it works. He has 10 times the amount of subscribers. He has 500 and almost 50,000 subs to Dad's 50,000 subs. And you could see, wow, it actually does work. If I just promote the shiny stuff, I can get all these people, because again, that's what they're hoping to hear. And Dad keeps saying the same old thing: hard work, focus, make the calls, have a routine, follow structure, follow a schedule. Well, people don't want to hear that. You could see it play off into the real numbers. However, I would make the argument that if you have we hear this all the time. We hear feedback from people that are in Tom Ferry coaching, and that is exactly what it is. It's a pitch for the next shiny thing. That every time I pick my head up, it's like, oh, get this thing and that thing and that thing and that thing. Well, I don't know about you guys. I mean, you guys are sitting on coaching consultations night and day. To be fair, I don't feel like we talk to nearly the amount of people who say that about Mike Ferry coaching. Like, we're out, we left it. It was junk. It was garbage. It was super shiny. They changed their messaging every single coaching call. They were asking me to do something. I never hear that feedback. And quite frankly, if I look at the per agent productivity between those two organizations, between Dad and son, I would bet my money that Mike has more successful per agent productivity than Tom. Because Tom, again, I respect him, but the part that I don't understand is how it just seems as though, based on the feedback that I'm getting, based on the content that I see, I mean, if you were to sit here and say, okay, what is Tom Ferry all about? Like, what is his strategy? It'd be hard to say.
Yeah.
Everything. The answer would be, well, everything. Whatever's new. Chat GPT, AI, farming, prospecting, teams, brokerages, whatever's exciting, that's what we're about. And so I think that's very difficult for people to follow. You know, it's very difficult for a tribe to buy into this when the message is constantly changing. And that is why I think that messaging is so dangerous for agents, because agents get behind a message. And that's why you've got agents that are diehard Mike Ferry agents, Mike Ferry brokerages. It's the same message for 50 years. We haven't changed who we are. This is what we believe. This is the principles. This is the Mike Ferry selling system. This is what we know that works. It produces millionaires by the droves, by the way, by the droves. It's repeatable. And so, again, I think that might make some people mad. I'm not saying that Tom Ferry doesn't have value to bring. I know there's a lot of people that are huge fans. I just hear so much feedback about the opposite. Thoughts?
Yeah. You know, Mike's like, you know, John Wooden. You know, you put your, we're going to put our socks on right. You know, and we're just going to do the same thing over and it works and it works and it works.
Yeah.
You know?
Because it's not what you teach. It's what you emphasize. This is what we talk about all the time. You know, people like agents if it's not new, they deem it not valuable. Well, I've heard that before. That's the thing that Darren Hardy calls the knowledge bias, or I think he might call it something else. I don't know if Colton, you remember what I'm talking about, where people are like, oh, I've heard that before. And because I've heard that before, I don't think that it's valuable. But then Darren says, well, it's not about whether or not you've heard it before. It's a matter of, are you doing it? And if you're doing it, have you mastered it? And if you said you've mastered it, do your results prove that you've mastered it? In other words, can we look at your bank account?
Yeah.
Can we look at your last month's income to prove that you've mastered it? And you find quickly those people say, oh, I've heard that before, aren't doing it, haven't mastered it, and can't prove that they've mastered it.
So good.
Yeah. All right. Let's go into the next topic. Colin, why don't you kick it off?
Sure. I guess it kind of plays to what we've been talking about, which would be value stacking, right? And so what I mean by value stacking is really, well, and let me rephrase that. I guess skill stacking might be a better way to put it. When I say value, I mean the value you can bring into the world, but from an internal perspective, your skills and stacking your skills. And so really just understanding, especially in the context of real estate, there's some key skills that you need to develop over your career and master to become a really good agent, not only for yourself and the income you make, but delivering results to your clients. And so kind of wanted to touch on the different skills that we can master as an agent, and then the order in which to master those, really, and focus on those skills.
Yeah, no doubt. And I got to do this just because I don't want to forget to do this. And this has to do with just the last topic, gentlemen. I promise Colton will come right back to it.
Yeah.
But I saw something and I'm like, should I do? I don't know. I have to. And so this is how passionate I am about this topic of, like the whole danger around people more interested in selling something to an agent versus they are helping an agent do something. This put me over the top. I almost called you guys over the weekend because of this. Now, if that curiosity loop isn't big enough, then I don't know what else is. But let me show you guys this.
I'm on the edge of my seat, that's for sure.
All right, this just took me over the edge. Okay, so let's jump into this. So I'm showing you right now Ricky Cruz Instagram. Right now, the dude has been. I think anybody would say that he is known for what? Cold calling, right? Circle prospecting, cold calling. This is my point. Because that might not be the sexy flavor, the cold calling thing in social media is, listen to his last Instagram reel. You guys ready?
2, 1.
To stop cold calling and do this instead. Go to a brand new sexy listing or your boring front yard. Grab your phone, open up Instagram, and make a reel using this script. Houses just like yours are selling as soon as they hit the market. And if you're thinking about selling your house this year, you might want to think about this. Every single year, sales are so seasonal and they always drop off in the fall, which means the very best time to put your house on the market is before July 4th. If you're thinking about selling your home, I would love the opportunity to interview for the job to work for you. Just shoot me a comment or a DM to get started today. If you make this video, you're guaranteed at least one warm lead. So save this video and send me yours when you make it. You need to stop cold calling.
All right. So did you guys hear that?
Yes.
Okay. So now that's not it. I could show you more. I don't know why the share screen, we got to fix that. But like, there's other stuff happening too. Like, he, for the longest time, was like, dude, you don't need to be calling FSBOs or expires. Just circle prospect.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, literally last week, he said, my favorite lead sources are FSBOs and expires. It's like, well, yeah, dude, where have you been for the last 25 years? Welcome to the party. Yeah. And I'm telling you, this has nothing to do with, I'm not trying to, it's nothing to do with him. It has to do with the market. He's finding that, like, well, it's easier to sell views on sexier shit than circle prospecting, cold calling. That's what this has to do with. Even though circle prospecting works. I love circle prospecting.
I think it's just the way it's portrayed. Like, yeah, I have no problem with, hey, I've tried this tactic and this tactic has worked, but it's the positioning of, like,
stop cold calling.
Erasing everything you've talked about in the past. Stop doing all of that and now do this instead, as opposed to, hey, try this strategy. It's been working for a lot of agents or whatever. It's just the positioning, the marketing message of it, like you said, that kind of makes it a little iffy.
Yeah, I have to question it. It's like, well, are you really trying to help the agent, or are you trying to do something different? Because as soon as you come out with the hook that says, stop cold calling, try this different, that's called a hook in content creation. So every agent who hates cold calling says, oh yeah, let me listen to that. That's exactly what they're hoping to hear. But the problem, again, this has to do with, what are we doing here? Are we trying to help the agent? Or are we trying to, I don't know. It's the messages like that kill me. It's like, what do you stand for? You've been talking for the last 5 years, cold calling, circle prospecting. Now, all of a sudden, you're trying to change your tune. Why? Because you might get more views, more clicks that way? Don't know. I mean, certainly you could go back to the Mike Ferry, Tom Ferry thing, and it didn't work for Mike Ferry to have one message, but he hasn't changed. And his business is doing fine. His people are doing just fine. So, yeah, Ben, what were you going to say on that?
Well, he's obviously got a good following, all of that jazz. Like, I would have just loved to see him say the best thing to do in addition to cold calling in this season is keep calling, but hey, try this, you know, and he could have said that even in the intro, and just used the clickbait of the title of Stop Cold Calling, maybe today, and say, today, send this video, and just continue to reinforce his message, because we all agree cold calling works. Like, he's been all over it, but does that strategy work? Sure. Right? Are you going to do it consistently? Are you going to drop it once and maybe get one lead? Sure. But like, maybe try and tie it in, your overall strategy, because it leaves you confused.
Yeah. And then the whole guarantee thing at the end, like, do this one post and I guarantee you will get a lead, or whatever he said. Again, this has nothing to do with Ricky. It's just like, it's messages that even the marketer is succumbing to get the view, to get the click. Like, you're not going to guarantee, like, the agent does that and they're going to get a lead. Like, it works because you're appeasing to a message that people are hoping they're finding by scrolling on everything. Oh, I found it. This is it. Right. This is the magic post. Yeah. And then they do it. It's like, well, I didn't get a lead. Anyway. Did you, I heard you, Ben, saying, oh yeah, I saw that. Did you see that and think the same thing?
Absolutely. And I've seen it a couple of times, like going back and man, he's all about circle prospecting to the grave, like all circle prospecting. And then all of a sudden he's talking about expires. I'm like, that's interesting. I've never heard that before. Let me go back. No, nothing. Right. So start to contradict yourself. And I mean, that's just exactly what we're talking about. I think just like you need in real estate, even in marketing, content, coaching, like he's doing, have a business plan, have principles, and stick to them.
Have beliefs. Have beliefs. What do you believe in? And if your belief is, well, I'm just going to talk about whatever the shiny thing is, the exciting thing is, I don't know. That's not the type of leader that I want to follow. That's for sure. That's for sure. And those are the messaging, again, that I get nervous about, that have the wrong intentions. Because when people say one thing and then they do the exact opposite. You know, it's like, so anyway, I digress. Let's get back to skill stacking. I apologize, Colton. When I saw that, these are good examples of what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Well, it's a good transition to skill stacking and how to do it the right way. I mean, like I said, there's nothing wrong with learning how to create content and adding on a new pillar to your business, but it's maybe the way you transition into that. Like if you have a certain strategy that you swear by when you're, marketing property or selling a property, and then you go and learn a new tactic, and then the next client you work with, all that other stuff. I know I kind of have a lot of that in my marketing, but actually that doesn't really work. This is the way to do it. It's like, you gotta have some principle with how you evolve over time. It's important. Stack your skills, learn new things. Absolutely. But have some principles and beliefs for, how you do it,
Well, okay. So that's so good. You're right. It's less about binary thinking, and it has more to do with, just skill stacking, addition. It has more to do with, so if you look at mathematics as an example, what we're talking about here is you can't get to algebra without first learning how to add.
Right.
It's a skill that you have to learn first, right? You have to learn how to add, then subtract, then divide, right? Then you can start to learn fractions. Then you can start, you're stacking these skills on one on the other. But nobody would ever say, well, addition doesn't work. Stop adding, stop subtracting, do division. Right. Well, you can't. So I think that's what you're talking about, Colton, and that's what we're talking about. Going back to this whole messaging thing, it's like, it's not that one thing you have to stop this or do that, or it's not binary. It's like, hey, here are some things that might help you in addition to what you're already doing. And because the new agent says, okay, I heard these people, they say cold calling, don't cold call, or don't use direct mail, or don't do Facebook ads. Don't. When people are succeeding doing that very thing, you have to add context. You've got to give it nuance. Now, the skill stacking thing, I 100% agree. It's like we do this all the time. The first skill is to get consistent. It's the habit of taking action on a consistent basis. You might suck shit at whatever the thing you're doing. The content you're making, it doesn't mean that when you start hitting record, that the content's going to be any good and therefore get you any result. But the first skill is to sit your rear end behind that camera and hit record every day. Then you can add on top of that your delivery. Then on top of that, you can start talking about your call to action. Then on top of that, you can start talking about repurposing the content, so on and so forth. And so, yeah, skill stacking, I think, is super important. And to me, the most important thing, Ben, is you can't skip these steps. You can't go from never, ever making a video before, hitting record, and then being Gary Vaynerchuk on the first delivery, which is what people want. You have to go through the suck in order to get good.
There's a progression. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think about like stacking in terms of, often we see people want to build 6 different bridges across the ravine instead of just focusing on one and getting the foundation pieces, adding another skill to build that bridge faster. And once you do get across, now you can run back and forth super fast and start to build another bridge, right? Add on different arms. But initially we talk about, even within people that are really having success in production, okay, hey, let's take a step back. Instead of, adding a completely new arm of doing XYZ, let's just keep going deeper. You're crushing it on cold calling. Hey, what if we added an ISA to go deeper on this one thing, right?
Yeah.
Continue to stack.
To optimize. Or the other thing I look at real quick, Colton, is with stacking skills is to not be, when we look at lead generation as a whole, actually, this is one of the things we're talking about in our coaching call later today, Ben, is, a lot of agents are, because there's a downside to being one-dimensional too, right? If the agent only is cold calling, that's an issue, right? Because, or they're only doing for sale by owners, or they're only circle prospecting. We believe that an agent should have a minimum of 3 sources of business, 3 to 5 sources of how to go out there and acquire new clients, right? And all 3 or 5 of those are a different skill set. And that's what we believe is a well-rounded business. Maybe you have an outbound approach. Maybe you have an inbound approach. Maybe you have a way to market to your past clients, centers of influence, to generate repeat and referrals. Maybe you have an effort to go out there and position yourself as a neighborhood expert. And maybe you have a strategy, a paid strategy, where you're doing a Google pay-per-click campaign as an example. Now, to me, that's a well-rounded business that is market proof, that no matter if there's a lot of for sale by owners, a lot of expireds, or none, or the market's up or it's down, you have business coming from all of these 5 channels versus one channel. But you can only do that, to Colton's point, of stacking skills.
Yes.
Well, and then there's like micro stackings too, because the skill of prospecting, there's so many skills within that, like the skill of a phone call and setting appointment, there's skills within that, so having a good opening, learning how to stay on track of the conversation, overcome the objection, how to really qualify the appointment. So there's so many micro skills within a skill. And to Ben's point, you were talking about earlier, and I'm just kind of summarizing in my own thought process of what I heard you say, which is like, agents are trying to do so many things at once that they're like, let me do this and then this and then this and this. And so they overestimate, and Tony Robbins said this, and I'll kind of translate it into real estate. People overestimate what they can do in a year, and they underestimate what they can do in a decade. So it's like, just really take your time and don't overshoot these 10 things you want to do. Like, let's get good at 1 or 2 of these, and then add another. And then eventually, then the compound effect, right? Now you have exponential growth over time.
Love
Absolutely.
it. Ben, let's get into our next topic.
Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about, which ties in completely with everything else, and we've already touched on it a little. So maybe we'll just kind of put a bow on it and move on to even something we were talking about before we got on the podcast, but just opportunity cost. So Colton talked about sunk cost, and those two go hand in hand. So if you have been doing a strategy, or you've been with a coach, or you've been doing something that hasn't worked, and you are the type of person that says, I'm just going to keep doing this. And that might be your career you're in now, or whatever. I got this education to be this type of person, and I can't move on from that. That's the sunk cost. But if we look at opportunity cost of what a new career could provide for you, or a new coach to help you get the type of skills to become somebody that produces the type of income you're looking at, then you have to start to look at opportunity cost. And the way I like to look at it is, hey, I'm making $5,000 a month now, but the skills that I need to invest in to get to that next level are $50,000, right? Man, I don't have $50,000 to get the skills to get to this new level. And you start thinking about it that way versus, hey, once I have those new skills, those will produce me the ability to make X amount of money. Let's just say $40,000. So in reality, it's costing you $35,000 every month. You don't know how to do or have those skills. So over time, it starts to really compound. Would love your thoughts.
Well, he calls it the ignorant tax. So in your it's the best way I've ever heard it put. In your example, if someone's making $5,000 a month, okay, $60K a year, let's just keep it monthly, $5K a month, and they want it to make $40,000. The spread is $35,000. That's the ignorant tax. And every month you aren't investing in yourself to learn how to do that. It's costing you $35,000. But people don't look at it this way because why? Because humans are more motivated by what? By loss, right? By avoiding loss than they are at the opportunity of gain. And so they don't look at it like, if I don't do this thing, or if I don't learn how to do this, if I don't invest in myself, call it $3,000 to go through this income generating skill, right? They don't look at it like, if I don't do that, it's costing me $35,000 a month. They look at it says, well, I've got 10K to my name, and I cannot part ways with the 3,000. And they look at it. That's what they're looking at. They're looking at it as a $3,000 loss. I'm more motivated to avoid that than I am parting ways with the 3K to earn another $35,000 a month. I know it's crazy, but we're talking about humans here. And if we're talking about humans, that is how humans behave. What's the best example of that of all time? W-2 employees.
Yes.
There's no better example. The W-2 employee, what's happening? The employer is putting a price on that person giving up on their dreams. You ever think about what a salary is? A salary is an amount of money that a human being says, that amount of money is what I'm willing to sacrifice and give up on my dreams for.
Wow.
I know. So if someone's making a $60,000 salary per year, they're telling themselves that's worth giving up on my dreams for. Because I would rather not lose the guaranteed $60,000 income for the unguaranteed unlimited upside. And by saying that, all you're saying is that's what it's worth. For my dreams are worth $60K a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And talk about opportunity costs. Like, I was just being a little curious here. I was pulling up Saleslytics, our custom software that a lot of our coaching and mastermind students get. And not having the skills would have cost you, based on this, Mr. Asher Black, in the last week. He had to take, when he started with us, year and a half ago, he took a couple steps backwards, like investing ahead of himself. And in doing that, he lost out on the money invested in the coaching. But if he didn't do that, and I don't want to take anything away from Asher, kid's a certified gangster. But had he not taken those couple steps back, it would have cost him 11 listings in the last week. Absolutely. Right? Like, so not having the skills, not investing ahead of yourself would have cost you 11 listings in the last 7 days. Like, so regardless of what you do, like if we're talking about Tom Ferry's program, Mike Ferry's program, our program, Ricky, if it's $100, $1,000, $50,000, whatever you invest into your education, even if it is into something that doesn't work for you right now, pretty much anything you can invest into and can learn from will more than return to you. That $8,000 program I talked about earlier that did not help me at all at that time and place, I actually give credit to helping me find the right direction to get to where I am today. So that $8,000 investment I made that didn't work for me at the time has more than paid off because of the things that's kind of led me to know, okay, now I go in this direction instead.
Great point.
So anything you invest into is going to be more than return. Like you close one or two deals even from it. So just like it'll return, but the opportunity cost is just so much more expensive than anything else.
I know. And that is it's so spot on. And that's what investing in myself has proven. It's like the best, really, really my world is just a byproduct of the investments I've made in myself. Not in the S&P 500, not even in real estate. Ben and I even debate that, which I've done that. I heavily invested in that. But that never produced the results I get right now. Never.
Well,
and all that's through, yeah.
I'm sorry, but even because I've been kind of side by side with you here the last 4 or 5 years. I've seen and have been blessed to participate in a lot of the investments you've made in yourself. And I can't begin to tell you how many investments you've made that we're like, oh, well, that didn't work. But we got one thing from it, or it helped us to clarify, like, okay, that's not the direction we go. And we had to make that investment to get to the right direction. Like,
such a great point. Let me give a practical example, right? So like maybe I've invested in I'll just call it a $50,000 consultant as an example, right? But put in $50K, and because it didn't work, most people would say, well, dude, you just wasted $50K. No. What Colton's saying is that $50,000, what seemingly was a mistake, probably helped us to avoid a $500,000 catastrophic, pitfall. And so it doesn't matter about, like, sometimes there's a direct ROI on it. And that's what happens most of the time. We're arguing with agents, that want to do better for themselves over a few $1,000s. The question is, if you invested in yourself a few $1,000s and as a result, you made $150,000 back, how many more times would you do that? And everybody would always say yes, but because of what you're talking about, Ben, which is this loss aversion, it's not how human beings are wired. They're not looking at opportunity cost. They're not looking at the ignorant tax. They're looking at, I have to protect this nest egg. Survival. I got to look at it through the scarcity mindset and not part ways with what I already have. That is how humans behave. And so how that changes, I don't know, but that's, to be aware of it is step one.
Let's talk about the thing that's more expensive than the money, which is the time. Like another practical example. What was it, last week, 2 weeks ago? Ben flew up here to Michigan. We jammed out for a couple days straight, plus all of the countless hours of phone calls we've had since then and Zoom meetings we're solidifying some future things for the direction of this company, right? And how much time did we spend on crafting an offer, doing this thing that a couple days later we completely scrapped? Like, no, that's not going to work. And then it led us to the next version and then to the next version. And so even the time you invest, if it's quote unquote not productive or doesn't lead to the direct thing you were investing that time on, is going to lead to the thing that does give you the return.
Well, and then to double down on that, you look at Alex Hormozi says too, like about the ignorance tax. If I have the ability to pay to expedite it, something that would otherwise take me time and experience and bruises and scrapes to figure out, then I am 100% going to pay the $50K for the consultant to get 10 years of experience in 2 weeks so that I do have more time to double down on everything.
Yeah, it's so funny. I have this argument with my brother all the time. We're like the total opposites. He's my stepbrother. And all the time, he's like, why would I pay somebody? Why would I pay a coach? Why would I pay a consultant all the time? We've had this argument.
I can see the way Bill would say this. Why would I do this, man? That's crazy.
Why would I do that? I'm like, well, I don't know. Why don't you just look at our current realities and then you maybe tell me, like where are you and where, like sometimes you just have to let reality speak for themselves. It's like, I don't know. That's number one. That's me being probably a dick, probably not the right thing to do, being passive aggressive. But the answer is what you said, Ben. It's like, well, I don't know. Because he's like, I could just figure that I could just do it on my own. That's the type of guy he is.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not that you can't. It's not that you can't do it on your own. But if you could get there in a quarter of the time, how much money would that save you? And then would it be worth it? That is the type of thinking I think that separates the 1% from everyone else. Where everyone else is like, I can't, that's expensive. I'm like, that's too expensive not to do. That's why I look at everything. I can't afford not to do that. And it's always proven to be the case. And Colton's hitting on it. Even if it wasn't a direct response impact to the thing I was trying to accomplish, the mere fact that it wasn't became the benefit. To find out that it wasn't the way to go sometimes is more valuable. That's the argument I would make, Colton. No. Sometimes that's more valuable to find out, damn, I'm glad we didn't go all out on that. That would have been a disaster. I'm glad I spent $50,000 to find out not to do that than to do it and end up spending $700,000 to find out 3 years later that we shouldn't have done that. Yes. Oh, and by the way, I've done that too. And I'm still paying the price for that today. And so it's so interesting the way you can just look at things to just contrarian thinking, I think is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Trigger for me when you said I can't afford that. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. And when people say they can't afford that, because it's not that they can't. Most people are choosing not to, right?
Yeah, it's not that I can't, I won't.
Exactly.
I won't.
And that's a result from it's either not important enough or their current situation isn't painful enough for them to ask the other question, which is how can I? And the thing is, just using, I guess, our experience, talking with agents every day, as an example, and there's a lot of people we talk to. And Ben, you tell me, but I would argue that the majority, probably close to the majority of people we talk to, like working together for one reason or another, maybe actually doesn't make the most sense for them, right? But I want to talk about the people who it actually is going to make a lot of sense for them. And this is exactly what they need. There's two types of people. There's the person that they're allowing their current situation to prevent them from getting to their future situation. And then there's the 18-year-old kid I talk to who's straight up like, dude, I've got $200 in my bank account, but I'll be back in 2 weeks. And 2 weeks later, they have the money. They figured something out. They're 18, 19, 20 years old. And so it's not like I can or I can't afford it. It's like, how painful is your situation now? And are you gonna settle with where you're at, or are you gonna do the painful thing now to get out of the more painful thing for the future? So, and it's not right or wrong. It's just,
I think it's a lot comes down to value and pain, right? If I came to you and I said, hey, I got this Ferrari, I'm going to sell it to you, Colton, you're dead broke, and I'm going to sell it to you for $50,000. Okay. I'll give you the option. It's brand new 2023. MSRP is $320,000 or whatever, right? Most people, they understand the value there. Gosh, I can make, X by selling this thing. I got to come up with 50 grand. They're going to go hell or high water and come up with that 50 grand. And that's the 18-year-old you just described. He's like, I know the value of this and what it's going to do for my life. So they go and they figure it out.
Because we'll put a bow on this and we'll end in today's episode, because Ben, it's not, that person looks at that decision not by it costing them $50,000.
Exactly.
But by not getting the $50,000, it costs them $270,000.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so if you could just invert the thinking, because, price is what you pay, value is what you get,
Yep.
And so if you just invert it, doesn't cost you 50. By not doing it, it actually costs you $270,000. Just a different way to think about it, but they're both true. So, boys, appreciate it. For the audience, appreciate your guys' time and attention, like always. And if there's a topic you guys want us to cover on a future episode, just throw it in the comments, and we'll plan on seeing you guys tomorrow morning.